And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Director of WEIU TV and Radio. My co-host today is Mr. Jackson Probst.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good, buddy. And today, Kelly Goodwin, WEIU TV News Director, is here. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today. I was shocked when you sent me the email and said, come on board.
Well, we were thinking,
and broadcast.
Most people know, if you don't know, Kelly Goodwin has been our news director here for 20 plus years at WEIU TV. And even though I tried to beg her out of retiring at the end of this calendar year, Kelly is retiring effective at 12/31/25. So that's kind of why you're here, because everything else is kind of booked through then. So it worked out to talk about your career today.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you snuck me in. My story is short, but I'm sure I can fill the time with my career here at WEIU, which does date back farther than just my time as an employee at Eastern Illinois University.
You were a student of WEIU way back when you were going to Eastern Illinois University.
Yes.
So take us back to some of those grad school days and things like that.
So when I was in high school, I of course had no idea what I wanted to do with my career. I enjoyed, believe it or not, theater. I was in plays and musicals, and I enjoyed public speaking. But I had a friend who said, hey, my mom and I are going to go check out Eastern Illinois University. Want to tag along? And I'm like, sure. And so we paid a visit to Eastern. I loved the campus. I loved how small it was, and decided I really wanted to attend. I applied. I got in. And the next thing you know, I was moving into Lawson Hall, and I was a freshman on campus. And still not decided exactly on what I wanted to do with my career. You know, most people know if they want to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever their career path takes them. I was not that kid. I just didn't know. And when I got on campus, my first semester, I had just a series of gen ed classes. And one of the classes that I had was an introduction to mass communication, whatever that meant. As a freshman, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So got to class, and essentially it was really the evolution of radio and TV. It was fascinating. And it was taught by Jerry Weaver. I'll never forget Jerry. And at the time, Jeff, he was in your position. He was the radio station manager, general manager at the time. So he really pumped up. Hey, we've got this radio station, television station on campus. And so my interest perked when he talked about that. I thought, that sounds really interesting. And he said, well, just come over to the TV station, to the class. Come over to the TV and radio station, check us out. So I'm not shy, but I did have to kind of work up the nerve to come over to the Buzzard building, which is on campus. And I did. And Buzzard at the time was very different. It was, those that are local know that Buzzard was renovated in the early 90s. So when I was a student here, I'm dating myself. When I was a student here, I popped over to Buzzard, worked up the courage, walked in the building, which is a lot different now. Walked in and I said, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm a freshman. I don't know anything about radio or television, but I think I'd like to work here. And they're like, well, come on in. Do you want to run studio camera tonight? Because we have a student that's didn't show up. And I said, sure. I just would need some instruction. And really the rest is history. I was bit with the bug and spent 4 years at WEIU as an undergrad and did just about everything. I started in production, and one day the news director at the time, which was Sue Kaufman, which is my mentor, and John Eisenhower, too. He oversaw the production of WEIU. They said, would you like to go on air? And I thought, ooh, I don't know about that. And so they had an opening for an ag anchor.
Ag?
Yes,
Yeah, really?
ag. I grew up outside of St. Louis, not real familiar with agriculture, so I had to be schooled on grain and grain prices and pork commodities and cattle, all of those things. Yep. But I said, sure, I'll give it a whirl. And so I had to write the stories for the block. And when I went home that evening, or went back to my dorm apartment, wherever I was living at the time, my roommates, of course, got a big kick out of it. They're like, you don't know anything about agriculture. And I said, no, but I'm going to try it. And they said, okay, well, here's the deal. when you go on air and you are anchoring, you have to do something so that we know that you know that we're watching you.
Okay.
And I said, okay. So, of course, I'm more preoccupied with what am I going to do so my roommates know that I know that they're watching, as opposed to focusing on, the hand. So I'm reading about cattle or commodities or grain or whatever the lead story was at the time, and all of a sudden I just stopped. And of course we're on the radio, so it's not going to be as visually funny. But I stopped in the middle of my
on TV,
read.
by the way, too.
Oh, okay, yes. Hi. I stopped and I just did the biggest wink of all. I mean, it was supposed to be just kind of a wink, but I literally stopped, and it was almost like my whole side of my face just cringed, and I winked. And when I got home that night, my roommates were like, oh, yeah, we saw you. We know exactly what you were doing to get our attention. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
That's
was
amazing.
the highlight of my college broadcasting career.
There you go. Jackson?
What has been your favorite part about this industry, or like your time here at WEIU?
You know what? I think getting the job here was so exciting because I was a student. When I graduated, I had this meltdown like, oh my gosh, I don't know if broadcasting is exactly what I want to do. And my news director at the time, Sue Kaufman, found out about a job opening in Terre Haute, Indiana, and said, you need to go to this interview. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Terre Haute, Indiana. She said, you're going to the interview. So I went, and it was brutal. I know I bombed the interview. They had me at a Globe, yes, a Globe at that time, asking me where countries were located. And they asked me all of these current events questions and, political questions in the sense of who's the governor and who's the state rep and all of these things. And I just, again, I was like, I felt like I bombed it. I'm sure I did bomb it. I never got a grade, but weeks later, they actually called me and said, well, we aren't hiring you for this job, but we would like to offer you this job. And it was, again, in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I said, I don't know. And then Sue Kaufman, my news director, said, you're taking the job. And so at $13,500 a year, my parents were a little skeptical about me taking a job that wasn't going to pay the bills. But I took the job. And I was at WTHI in Terre Haute for 10 years, did great things, met great people. To this day, I still have relationships with people from WTHI. But I did a lot of things there. But to answer your question, as I said, I'm long-winded. The opportunity at WEIU came up a couple of different times when I was at WTHI, and I just kept thinking, I just don't know if the time is right, and I don't know if I want to leave commercial television. And it came up a third time, and I remember the chief engineer at the time called me and said, okay, Kelly, the job is open again, and we'd really like for you to think about it. And you know what? Just something came over me, and I thought, maybe I should make the jump. And so I think that was probably the best decision that I ever made, was believing in my heart and my head, saying, you know what? Just because you're leaving commercial television and going to a public broadcasting station doesn't mean it's the end of your broadcasting career, which it wasn't. I mean, it was such a great decision for me, and in my mind, professionally a step up because I got to do some different things.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Do you realize, or do you have any understanding of what the student impact you've left for some of the kids here? I mean, I know that you do your job and you're focused on it, but I mean, the impact that you've left the kids. Anytime we mention your name, they just light up. Do you?
Their face probably turns red because they remember the time that I've yelled at them about something.
But do you understand the impact you've had on these kids?
I don't. I'm humbled, because I know that there was something posted on Facebook. I'm not a book of face, as one of our former alums mentioned. She's not on Facebook. I'm a Facebook creeper. I will say that, but I don't have a personal page. So I did see the wonderful thing that was posted on the alumni page about my retirement. And in looking at that, I did see the responses, and it was like, your heart swells because I remember all of the people that, commented and stories and people I worked with, former bosses, former coworkers, and the students. But, you just don't think about that. I suppose you could ask any teacher the same question, like,
Yeah.
do you realize, and I guess I've never really took a step back and chewed on that.
Okay. We'll talk about that more later. So, Jackson, go ahead.
So this is gonna be a kind of a longer question. If you could go back in time and spend either a day with yourself on either your first day as a freshman here at EIU or your first day working at WEIU, what would you say to yourself?
Wow. Two very different scenarios. I was excited as a freshman student to get away from mom and dad and to be on my own and not have curfews and do whatever I want. So that feeling was exhilarating. Leaving a job that I loved to go to another job that I hoped that I would love was also kind of exhilarating. It was scary, too, because I was stepping into a job here at WEIU where the students were already established. There was already a show. There was already leadership. And then when somebody else comes in new and wants to change things or do things differently, I'd never been a manager. I was only bringing to the table what I had learned in commercial television and had hoped that experience would transition into being a leader in the newsroom. So that's what I shared. So really two different experiences. A great question, but just two different. And as a freshman in college, you're young and immature. And I would hope that when I took the job here, I had a little bit more seniority.
And
on
what
my
year
side.
did you come here? What was the year you started at?
I started at WEIU in 2000 or 2001. It was in December.
Okay.
I came in at the end of a semester. So, a lot of my life here.
That's
All right, now
amazing.
maybe a tougher question is this summer or whenever you decided, hey, I know today this is the last semester. Talk about that decision to actually say, I'm going to retire from WEIU.
Yeah, tough. It really was tough. As people may or may not know, I am married to Pat Goodwin, who is the former fire chief in town. Pat and I crossed paths many years ago in the business. In his position as fire chief, I interviewed him, students interviewed him, and so I've known Pat forever. But our lives crossed again, and we are now married. And when we got married, one of the things that Pat said was, when you turn a certain age, I want you to retire, and I want us to enjoy life together. I turned a certain age, and I began thinking about it. And there were many, the students have asked me this too. They've said, what kind of was the ultimate factor? And I can honestly say it wasn't one thing. It was living life with my husband. He's retired. He's been out of the fire service profession for several years. He's retired. So the thought of having a life in retirement together was something that was very important to me. My mother's up in age, I'll be honest. She is in assisted living, and I just felt like if I had to get home in a short period of time, she's in the St. Louis area, I wanted to do that. I have grandkids, and I've missed Grandparents' Day, I've missed T-ball games, other events at school, and I don't want to miss out on that anymore. I'd like to travel. We bought a camper. we have a friend group that we camp with, and it's going to be fun just to say, hey, on a Tuesday, do we want to go camping?
And no one can tell you no.
Nobody can tell me no. And people asked, well, didn't you want to wait till the end of the school year? And my response to that was there's always going to be an end of the school year. There's always going to be students that I won't see a finality to. And when I say that, it's not that I'm not going to follow them or keep in touch with them. It's just I'm not going to see them, in their career at WEIU. So it was always going to be infinite if there wasn't a time, and the time just felt right now.
That's a good answer. And I did beg. I tried to get her to stay through this calendar year or the fiscal year.
He did.
I tried.
Gotcha.
So I did try.
Gotcha.
We'll get to you in a second, Jackson. One thing that came to my mind also is when you think back to this 20 plus years of doing news every night, 5:30, usually in the spring and fall semesters, is there ever been a newscast that you remember back to that was just the toughest one, that was just so hard because of the news of the day or something that was happening behind the scenes? Was there one that just was tough to get out at 5:30?
I would say it was several years ago, and without going into grave detail about the actual story, and those that are local probably remember it, but it was a series of story and actually a newscast that we devoted to the Graywood facility closing and the stories that led to that closing. And students at that time jumped in and said, we need to make this a special report. We need to talk to families. We need to talk to the state. We need to talk to a lot of different players involved in that closing of that facility. And it was an intense show. It was emotional stories that went into it. And I just kept thinking throughout the planning process of this, and then when the show was all put together, my heart raced because I thought we've got to nail everything. We've got to make sure everything is right. We've got to make sure audio is right and graphics are right. Not that I don't think that every night. It's just, when it's a larger story, it's a larger piece, it's a special report, you want to do it justice.
Cool.
That's fair.
Jackson?
So would you say that you'll miss probably the students the most here at WEIU? I mean, I was going to ask, what are you going to miss? But I know it's probably the students. Would I say that's right?
Hands down, yeah. Students.
Yeah.
So many stories. I mean, just every day there's a story, whether it's bantering back and forth about the NFL or, personal relationships I've developed with students or issues that they may have. There's a lot of things. I mean, Jeff,
Yeah.
I mean, when your whole world is students, they become your family. And I've told them over the years, I don't have biological children. I have 2 wonderful stepchildren and grandchildren, but the students at WEIU really do become your kids. And I say that because I've spent more time with them, than my own family.
And that's the thing. I don't know. I did not think about that when I took my job at WEIU. That how you would get to know these students, and then they would leave every semester. Some would leave.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's crazy like that.
I told somebody that May and December are my favorite months, but my my least favorite months, because each May and December you have new students that come on board, but then you have great students that leave the nest, and that's what's hard.
There you go. We're talking to Kelly Goodwin today on Issues and Attitudes, WEIU's news director, who's announced her retirement at the end of the calendar year. Just so everybody knows, that we will still have news in the spring semester. We've worked out a plan working with Matt Gill and the Journalism Communications Department here. So don't panic that there won't be news. There will be news, and beginning as soon as we get back from the Christmas break.
Right.
So don't panic on that. And Kelly actually will. She told me, I'm only a phone call away. We're going to try not to call, but there's going to be some time we're going to know. We need to know this, and we'll have to call Kelly. Kelly, live news is something that we hang our hats on at WEIU because it gives the students the best experience, and that's really what Dr. Gatrell wants to make sure is our students have the best experience. So how do you deal with a last-minute news change or an anchor that called in sick at the last second or something that breaks late in the afternoon, but we have to get it on at WEIU?
Well, funny, everything that you just said has happened over the last 24, 25 years. And I think it's just the nature of the newscast. I think you just work together as a team, and I mean that. I know that's an overused phrase, but I mean that sincerely. And the students spring into action when something like that happens. If somebody is sick or doesn't show up for whatever reason, there is somebody there waiting to say, Kelly, I can step in. That's not a problem. Technologically, I can tell you it's machinery. It's going to flake out, and it does. And when that happens, we find workarounds. We either, if the prompter dies, the anchors have hard copy scripts. That's what they read. That's what they read. If we have a video element that decides not to play, the anchors spring into action and alert the viewers that we've had technical difficulties. That's the beauty of having a live production. It's the beauty of the educational side of a newscast that the students get to experience, because there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
You can't go back and re-edit something. You can't go back and replay it again.
Yeah.
It's
26 minutes of live news.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we've had many of those. I mean, we've had many of those experiences. And each night after the live newscast, we have a little meeting after the show just to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. And students will say, there's not one student that I've ever worked alongside that has done something intentionally. And what I mean is, if there's a slight mistake in the newscast, or they rolled something a little too soon, or the prompter went a little too fast, it's never intentional. And when we sit in those meetings, it's heartfelt from those students to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I said, I know. I mean, this is a learning experience too. So when those types of issues arise, the students appreciate having that live broadcast experience to build upon and to learn from, and to know the next time when something happens, how to get things back on track and to fix the problem.
Learn from their mistakes. Yeah,
learn from them.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to do it than to have a live experience like they've been able to have.
Yep.
So this might be a bigger question as well. What would you consider to be your greatest accomplishment here at WEIU?
That's a really good question. I actually emailed a former student within the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
They were congratulating me on my retirement. And I said, I said, what makes me the most happy is seeing the successes of the students that we work alongside. And I'm just not saying, oh, they're successful because they went into broadcasting. I'm talking the success of the students that go through the radio and television program and go on to do great things in all different areas. And so I can't say that's actually a newscast or an award or a story that was produced. It's their successes. Whether it's being a mother or father and having a child for the first time and building their family, or starting their own business, or pursuing broadcasting and then moving up in markets and doing great things.
Yeah.
That to me is, I don't know if it's a success, but that to me is the biggest success.
Gotcha.
Are the stories behind the students.
We have about 4 minutes left today with Kelly Goodwin. Kelly, I want to fast forward. The date's going to be 12/19/25. That's going to be your last newscast here at WEIU. Have you even thought about it yet? Have you thought about what when you leave that night at 6:30, heading into the Christmas break, that it's over?
No. You know what? Which is, I thought about this too. I have had 2 professional jobs in my life. I worked at WTHI in Terre Haute, and I've been here. I'm not going to give away my age or year I graduated. Mm-hmm. I know what it felt like when I walked out of WTHI, and that was a lump in your throat. I don't know. I've tried not to think about walking out, because I don't ever say goodbye to the students like when they graduate. I just say, I'll see you down the road.
There you go.
So,
have you thought about your legacy? I mean, you're leaving here with 20 plus years of experience. You've touched so many different lives. Have you talked about the Kelly Goodwin legacy? You proud of it? I mean, you just also won a national award that you skirted right over.
Oh, I am proud of it, and I hope that the legacy is students have learned, and that when they go on and do those great things post WEIU, that maybe, excuse me, that they sit back and think, oh yeah, Kelly wouldn't do that, or Kelly would tell me to do this, or Kelly would say, don't wear that, or write it that way. You know, because that was me thinking about Susan Kaufman. I mean, she's in my head a lot. When, you know, I remember taking her scripts and she'd write it all up in red, like that's terrible, and I'd walk away thinking I'm a terrible writer. But, you know, she's in my head, so I'm hoping that, you know, things that maybe I taught without even knowing I taught to students is something that they'll take with them beyond WEIU.
Any last thoughts from you, Jackson, from the student perspective?
From the student perspective, this is more of like a retirement question. Are there anything you want to pursue in retirement, or like any hobbies you want to get into, or something like that?
Well, my husband's obsessed with fishing, and I enjoy fishing too. Just he treats it like a job, and I treat it more as a hobby and having fun. But we do have a big fishing trip planned to Canada.
That's awesome.
Next year. So hope to do some more fishing. Hope to be able to see family and friends a little bit more often. I'm a doer, so I hope to, you know, find my niche, find a hobby that I really enjoy doing, and I don't know, you know, I've never had this much time, right? Or I anticipate I will never have this much time. So I hope that. Bottom line is I just want to enjoy life.
Yeah,
and somebody told me one time when I talked about retirement, they talked about, you know, enjoying your golden years, and I want to do that now. Wow, I guess I'm a little still golden.
Well, I want to say one thing while you're on the air, too, is that we want to send out best wishes to Kat Toma down in Nashville. She's battling cancer down there, and just best of luck, Kat, because I know she's one of your – I know you don't like to say favorites, but she was a great kid here. So we're thinking about you, Kat, if you get a chance to know this. Kelly, 30 seconds to sum up the day and your career. If you pretend you're talking to your kids.
That they will forever be in my heart, in my head, and that I never say goodbye, but I will see you down the road, and I wish everyone nothing but great success.
It's amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Kelly Goodwin, WEIU TV News Director. She will be here until the end of this year, and she's retirement, and we wish her nothing but the best of luck. Thanks, Kel.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jackson.
Of course.